Welcome to the second episode of Classroom Chronicles with our guest speaker, Mr. Scruggs. And would you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, so this is my 10th year at Panther Creek. This is my 21st year of teaching altogether. I was at a small school in Eastern North Carolina called North Pitt High School just outside of Greenville for 11 years. And then, as I said, 10th year here. This semester I teach AP US History and AP Government. Next semester I'll have AP Government and Honors American History. And I coach cross country and track. And for a long time I coached JV basketball too, but now just cross country and track. And part of that is due to time commitments. As things have changed, I'm married and I've got a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old now that demand a little bit of my time.
And about your 10-month-old, his name is Lincoln, right?
The 2-year-old is Lincoln.
2-year-old.
10-month-old is Marshall.
So what inspired that name?
So I've always been a fan of history, presidential history. If there's a book about Abraham Lincoln that I can get my hands on, I'm going to read it, or have read it. And it was interesting. It's my wife actually that proposed the name because she knows my love for teaching and history and Abraham Lincoln, and I certainly was more than happy to go with that.
Nice. So what are some stories like other than that about Abraham Lincoln? Because we already know that a lot of your room is just covered with a lot of Abraham Lincoln statues, pictures. There's a cardboard cutout of you of Abraham Lincoln with your face on it.
Yeah, that was actually a gift from our cross-country seniors from the class of 2021. They gave it to me at our last practice of the season, and they just asked that I always keep that on display in my classroom. So I've kept that promise.
And there's also a flag in your room that says Scruggs for President. So what's the story about that?
That was a gift from some of my AP US history students from, I believe, 2 years ago. I've never been in the classroom when he visits, but you found out
I've
Abraham Lincoln visits my classroom from time to time. And so those students, I guess, took a picture when he visited. I really hope that one day I can get to be in the classroom when he visits. So fingers crossed on that. But I often joke with my students, if we're talking about politics, I'll make sarcastic insults to all degrees of politician. At least I try to keep, I insult Republicans and Democrats equally, I hope, Republicans and Democrats. But I often joke with my kids, like, yeah, if you just don't have anybody you want to vote for, just write in Scruggs. Or we'll talk about, someday when I run the world, this is how it's going to be. So that they took that and ran with it and made the flag.
Nice. So what are some stories that you could connect back to?
Okay. So, I'll go into a little bit more of the Lincoln interest. My dad's always been interested in history and Civil War history, and he got me interested in that from a pretty young age. But also, I'm from Rutherford County, which is a small rural area about an hour west of Charlotte. And while most history textbooks will tell you that Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky, there's a number of people that believe that he was born as the illegitimate son of a farmer in Rutherford County, where I'm from. So he was actually born in North Carolina. Near my hometown, there's actually a little museum called the Ballstick Lincoln Center. And there's been a couple of not widely read books written claiming that Lincoln has some Tar Heel origins. So that's a little unique Abraham Lincoln story tie into my hometown too. As I say, even Lincoln at 2 years old, you show him a picture, that's Abraham Lincoln. And so stories are tied into teaching. I've learned over 21 years a lot of what doesn't work. Probably I've learned more what doesn't work than what works, because we all try to get better with age. But for my personal life relating to teaching, I've learned I've got to do a better job getting sleep. So I always teach to the athletes I coach, the students I get to teach, that you need 8 hours of sleep. And that's going to make a bigger difference in your academic success, a bigger positive difference than if you stayed up till 3 a.m. studying for an AP Gov test that you should have been studying for a week in advance, things like that, right? So you got to learn when's the shut-off valve time, when you got to say, no, I'm not reading anymore tonight, I'm not studying anymore, I'm going to bed, get my sleep. I've always advocated that. I haven't been a great practitioner of that. And right now, I kind of give myself a little bit of grace with the sleep because, with the 2 little ones, the sleep comes a little bit more rarely. But early in my teaching career, I really didn't put as much emphasis on that as I should have. And when I was teaching in Greenville, I was for a while I was dating a girl that lived in Durham for like 5.5 years. And so I would often have like late Sunday evening drives back to Greenville and, you know, do the things sometimes where I was like hitting the rumble strip on the side of the road and head bouncing. But I really learned the hard lesson about it even earlier when I was, I believe, between my sophomore and junior year of college. And I lived in Chapel Hill for the summer. I was working at Stanley Steamer, cleaning carpets. Very back-breaking labor. Like, it's much more manually demanding than you would think. So I worked all day at the job. I was worn out, and I was, you know, a 20-year-old, maybe 21-year-old, I can't remember at the time, college student. So college students don't do the best job of sleeping, just like high school students. Yeah. So for some reason, I don't remember why, I was traveling to my hometown to visit my parents for a long weekend after work that day. And it's about a 3.5-hour drive. And I had gotten about maybe 5 miles from my parents' house. So you think 3.5-hour drive, I was probably 3 hours and 25 minutes into it. And I was doing that thing where like your head bobs. Oh gosh. And at that time, I was really opposed to caffeine. I was like, no, that's just like a diuretic. There was lots of reasons I wanted it for athletic performance, but I probably didn't have as good a reasons as I thought I did for not ever drinking caffeine. And I was like, you know what, I'm fine. I can make it 5 more miles. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up when all the glass shattered out the passenger side of my car as I fell asleep and ran into an 18-wheeler. Now, if you've seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation at the start of the movie when Chevy Chase runs under the big logging truck, that's essentially what I did, except I didn't fit under the truck. I drove a 1990 Ford Probe, so a little kind of sporty car. And we were on a 4-lane highway, so I was heading the same direction as the 18-wheeler. I fell asleep and drifted to my right, and I woke up when all the glass shattered out of the passenger side of the car. Worst wake-up call you'll ever get. You think an alarm clock sounds bad. You know, wake up and see glass flying towards your face while you're going 75, 70-ish. I wasn't really speeding. I was sleeping. I wasn't speeding. Not like that makes any better. But I was like, whoa! The truck kept going. I kept going. Drove on to my parents' house. It totaled my car. They could get to my parents' house, but I had to go to the shop, and it was beyond repair. But my mom, I went and woke my parents up. I was like, hey, y'all, I just ran into an 18-wheeler. And my mom came out the driveway and looked at it. She started crying. She's like, how are you still alive? And, you know, but for the grace of God, I don't know why I'm still alive. Maybe to teach lessons like this, to remind students that they shouldn't be driving drowsy or something like that. Because, you know, there's all kinds of studies that, like, if you're been awake for a certain number of hours, it's almost just like your body's operating like if you had a blood alcohol content. Yeah. So it's dangerous. So yeah, that was the hard lesson I learned. After that, I kind of softened my personal rule about like if I was driving, needing caffeine, so drinking a Coke or something like that. And yeah, so get your 8 hours of sleep. 8 hours of sleep will make more difference in your life than just about any other change you can make. And not saying I've been perfect since then, because in the years after that, my early years of teaching, your early years of teaching, and any teacher around can tell you, they're brutal. Like, you're exhausted. I'm not saying teaching's easy at 21 years, but those first years when you're figuring it out and you're making new lesson plans every day, you're just constantly in almost like a zombie state sometimes. Kind of like the first months of being a parent. But yeah, I definitely didn't learn the lesson as well as I should have at the time, but by now I know, like, if I'm tired, I'm not driving. I need to shut it down or something. But also because Coach Baggeson and a lot of our runners know my history like that, when we have those late night drives home from track meets in Winston-Salem every Friday night, like we'll have tomorrow night in winter track and field, that they kind of know. Somebody go sit up front and talk to Scruggs on the bus as I'm driving.
Well, that's a great lesson to all of those students who stay up till 3 a.m. I know some people in our first period stayed up till 3 a.m. studying for that Gov test. So,
well, let's hope it worked out for them. But I think more often than not, it's not going to work out.
I know it never works for me personally. For chemistry too, we studying that late just does not help.
And you know, there's all kinds of research. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just want to say you have to be consistent with your studying and because sleep helps you remember your information better, and it kind of like processes and cleans through.
And consistent with the bedtime. Whenever it is, like if you're consistent with it frequently, and doing all the things that teenagers and adults don't do today, like shutting the screens off an hour before bedtime. All that makes a huge difference in alertness over the coming days. And that's not just like a health thing for the next day. That's like cumulative health over the years. So if you get consistently below 8 hours of sleep, you're opening yourself up to not just poor cognitive performance in class, but all kinds of long-term health impact.
I know for sure Arul has a problem with that. We talked about in the last episode how Arul consistently gets like 1 to 2 hours of sleep. Sometimes like he falls asleep and the alarm goes off.
Or the alarm goes off when he's awake.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But a lot of teachers do have that problem where they just don't get enough sleep.
And as I said, excuse me, I am far from perfect on that. So I preach something, that doesn't mean I'm always able to carry it to fruition.
Yeah, do as I do, or do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
If you had to choose between AP Gov or A Push, which one's your favorite?
Okay, so I'm gonna say A Push, and that's not because I don't like AP Gov. I'm enjoying AP Gov more every time I teach it, but this is my, I want to say 4th year teaching AP Gov. This is my 11th year teaching A Push, and so I just have a stronger background in A Push. So I like the classes, I think, fairly equally. Now I'll say, when we talk about bureaucracy in AP Gov, that's the one part where I get excited coming to teach everything any day, but that's the one thing where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm teaching bureaucracy today. Other than that, I can really rock with it. But I'm probably gonna say A Push just because I'm so much more confident with it. I know it better. Like I score A Push exams in the summer, so if a student asks me, hey, why was this DBQ a 5 out of 7 or something, right away I can hit them with, well, we're missing this point. Or somebody asked me, what was, Abraham Lincoln's third son's dog or something like that. Those random fact, I can pull it out right away. AP Gov, I love learning more about government as I teach it, but because I haven't been teaching as long, and I was a history major and not a government major, that I have to when I get some student questions, I have to be hold on, let me process this for a second.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed during class that every time there's anything history related, the dates and everything, you're pretty good with the dates and the names, which is what screws me up a lot of the time. I feel like, but
well, fortunately, there's not a lot of the dates you have to obsess about. I probably confuse students because I'll talk so much about dates. I might say this happened on July 20th, 1969. We just talked about what happened July 20th, 1969. The U.S. put a man on the moon. Right, so we just talked about the Kennedy administration and the moon race yesterday, and I see students writing down. I have to remind them, you don't need to know that for my test, for the AP exam.
Honestly,
you need to know general concepts.
It's really impressive that you remember all of that.
Do you have any tips for memorizing all these dates, or is it just love?
I mean, it's just love, passion. Read a lot. I mean, it's not like I read one book about Abraham Lincoln 10 years ago, so now I know this stuff about it. It's because I read a couple books about him every year, and you start to see the same stories over and over those books, then you start to get it. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is continual exposure to the material. But of course, that's because I really love U.S. history. I'm passionate about it. Same thing with coaching. I'm passionate about that. So I read, running and biomechanics stuff and like that all the time. So when I'm pulling something out a story about the 1968 Olympic marathon trials or something like that, I'm telling one of our cross country runners, it's not because I read that once 5 years ago. It's usually because I saw that in this book and that book and that book or something like that.
Talking about track and cross country, what are some fun stories you have from your years coaching?
Fun stories. I've got lots of stories. Maybe we should talk off camera about what our classification of fun is. I have fun every day at practice, and we've had a lot of very fortunate success here at Panther Creek. We won 5 state championships in in track and field between indoor and outdoor track, guys and girls, since Coach Bag's not been coaching together here. Excuse me. But we've been fortunate to have a lot of really gifted athletes come through that have now competed at Division I level and even competed for the U.S. at Pan American Games level and things like that with Morgan Smalls and both Jared Harrell have gone on to do that. That was one of the cooler coaching experiences I got when I got to go to Peru in 2019 to coach Morgan at the Pan American Games in high jump, and she was a high school junior jumping against professional athletes. So that was cool. What are we thinking of in the realm of fun stories?
I mean, I know, like, for Halloween, I'm pretty sure track did something where everyone dressed up, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, you dressed up as Abraham Lincoln once again.
Well, remember, Lincoln comes by.
Yeah.
I just,
he
and
doesn't
unfortunately,
dress up.
I'm never around at the same time.
Yeah.
So we usually like to have some appropriate time of the year theme practices. Like we have a Halloween theme practice. Just let's see, Tuesday we had our holiday theme practice where Kelly McBride made a great fast Santa Claus. We want practice to be the best part of somebody's day, and part of that is working hard. But then also, we know that you need a little stress relief sometimes. We want to make sure that we just enjoy being around each other too. So we do things like that. We always talk about work hard. Same things I talk about in class. We say our athletes have to make themselves do hard things, so you gotta get uncomfortable. We always talk about how everybody's got a role in making everybody else's day better, so you're being a positive radiator of energy instead of a drain of energy. And we always talk about sweeping the shed, which goes back to an idea from the New Zealand rugby team, which they were like the best rugby team in the world, but they believe that like everybody on the team, even like the star who scored all their points, should have to clean the locker room after the game. So they call it sweep the sheds. So that's why we frequently say sweep the sheds. So like if you're not leaving the bus looking right or team area to meet or something, we'll really harp on that.
You play handball as well.
I do play handball.
Nice.
Yeah, I still play with and coach the UNC alumni team. I played my senior year of college and my year of grad school when I was getting my master's in teaching. And so yeah, I play that. I get injured in that a lot. It's very exciting because it's such a small sport in America that I wish it was bigger, but it's a small enough sport that the people you play you get to know really well, the people you play on other teams. So I've got friends that go back 20 plus years that I was playing handball against in college, and I'll still play in tournaments against them here in 2024 or 2025 almost.
Do you have any chaotic school memories that happened in the classroom?
I have a lot of chaotic school memories in the classroom. I might not have as many chaotic school memories as Mr. Markham because he's got a few more years on me, but just a few. Let's see, chaos.
Absolute chaos.
Yeah, well, this was now in the end an okay situation because nobody was very badly hurt. But one time, my last school, the buses dismissed just outside the wing where my classroom was. And then you could hear a crash and people were running all over, and a bus had pulled out in front of a car on the highway. The car kind of ran up under the bus. The bus was jacked up on top of the car, and kids were coming off the bus, and we had to set up like our whole wing of the building, kind of like a war zone, where like you had like, we turned like rows of desks into like stretchers. Now, like I said, nobody was badly hurt. But of course you want to take precautions and make sure that nobody's badly hurt. So that was one of my craziest days of teaching. You don't think of after school dismissal, having to turn your classroom into like a miniature hospital ward. The chaos. I don't know if it's appropriate for a podcast. I've plenty of instances over the years of like fights broken up or catching people doing things that they shouldn't on campus, which you like all the time, like what went through your brain that made you make that decision or something like that. I guess this can be semi-podcast appropriate. One of my last years, my last school, I was breaking up a fight that happened as I was doing morning bus duty, and there were two girls, and one shouted to the other, and I thought they were like friends. Like it was almost like, "Hey, wait up on me!" And then they started swinging on each other, and I was sitting here trying to separate them, and as gently as I possibly could. But also, these girls were very angry, and they had each other's hair. And when girls are fighting, and they get a hold of each other's hair, I remember the teacher had shared or what didn't share with me, but was the next door down from me, actually played defensive tackle at Wake Forest, and He was about my age, and I remember like screaming for him to come help me. So you had us trying to pull people apart. Eventually, the school resource officer came and was handcuffing one of the girls up against the wall, and then a random third student came and like reaches over the school resource officer and starts hitting the one that's against the wall, and then so I actually carried her outside, and she's yelling at everybody coming in about you can get it, and I was like, well, hold on, what? And I found out she wasn't involved in the initial dispute. She just saw some people swinging, thought that looks like something I should get involved in, and I just kind of held her there. She was shouting at people, and I was like, are we calm? She keeps screaming at people. I said, are we calm? Then finally, yes, Scruggs, you can put me down now. Are we going to behave? Yes, Scruggs. Yeah, put her down. So, but like I said, that was like one instance. None of that happened on a regular basis or anything like that. So, lots of things like that.
Also, if Abraham Lincoln were to ever go on a podcast, what do you think he would talk about?
Oh, I think Lincoln would probably have a lot of commentary on modern politics if he could see what was going on now. I won't try to put words in his mouth, but I think he'd be probably a little surprised at our current political situation in America, even after the tumultuous time during which he led the country. I think that if he was doing a podcast like you're doing about like stories from school, he'd probably be really jealous that he didn't get stories from school, because he was pretty much self-educated. Or his stepmother, Sarah Bush Johnson, she gave him most of the education he got, and for him to become a lawyer, he was kind of self-taught, apprenticed himself to lawyers. So I think that would probably be his biggest contribution to a school podcast. Like, oh my gosh, y'all get to go to school? This is amazing. So don't take it for granted.
And do you think he would have any life advice for any students?
Oh, I think he would have lots of life advice for students. I think one, he would say, I'm going to have to paraphrase, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but if he had something like 6 hours to chop down a tree, he'd spend the first 5 hours sharpening the axe or something like that. So be a little slow and deliberate with things. Like, don't rush to decisions. He was famous for whenever he would have generals who angered him during the Civil War, he would get really irritated and write a letter about how they had failed him, and then he put it in the desk drawer and decided he was going to send it if he still felt that way in a couple days. And when he died, they found a desk drawer full of letters that never got sent. So I think he would probably tell us to probably be pretty slow to criticize on social media, or to send an angry text message or email or something like that. Say, hold on, let's see if you feel this way a little while later, and let's deal with it. I think he might have told your class some advice about how if you've got a quarrelsome significant other and you're in an argument, the best advice might be just, hey, drop it, walk away from it, ignore him for a while. That's what he would do with his wife whenever she was yelling at him and everybody in the house, and then come back later and everything's okay. And the whole thing's washed over.
What is like an uncommon history fact that's usually like not thought about, or fun facts?
A fun fact that's not thought about?
Yes. A rare one.
Okay, here we go. We'll tie Scruggs' love of UNC into what we were talking about in AP US History today. There's been talk about Bill Belichick coming back to coach at UNC, or well, not coming back, sorry, Matt Brown came back. That was not a huge success. But Bill Belichick being hired to coach at UNC, and I've seen several pictures posted of him hanging out at Keenan Stadium, because when he was a very young boy, his dad was an assistant coach at UNC. Another famous American with a tie to UNC is Gerald Ford. So my class was talking about the Ford presidency today. And when Gerald Ford was in the Navy during World War II, he actually spent some time in Chapel Hill doing pre-flight training. And he actually he was very physically vigorous. He had been a football player at the University of Michigan, so he liked to exercise. So he used to go on runs with the UNC cross-country team. That's something you didn't know. President Gerald Ford used to run some with the UNC cross-country team, which of course gives him a special place in my heart. So yeah, that might be your random fact. He, like a lot of us, spent some time in the southern part of heaven.
Nice. There was another president you talked about a while ago. That was from North Carolina. That was from, or he was a candidate for one of the elections, and he was a third party, I think.
I think what you're thinking about is James K. Polk. And what I talked about was James K. Polk was the only president that attended UNC.
Yeah.
But James K. Polk also, some historians would consider the most successful president ever.
Yeah.
Now, we're not saying best. James K. Polk, ideas about slavery, things like that, some things that, boo, we wouldn't appreciate 2024, or we shouldn't appreciate 2024. But as far as the things that he said he was hoping to accomplish, manifest destiny, restore an independent treasury, like a checklist, he got most of that done. So if you're looking at the most successful president ever as far as accomplishing their goals, we're probably going to have to say James K. Polk. And then remember, the comparison you can make is who's the president that goes down in history as the only president having to resign in disgrace so that he wasn't impeached because of a scandal?
Nixon?
Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon went to Duke Law School. So you've got the Duke presidents, you've got the UNC presidents, and you can make your own judgments about the schools based on that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, or who brought that up too, how he brings up a lot that dark blue just is not his color. He doesn't very much appreciate the dark blue.
I deal with a lot of struggles at home with the red, since my wife is a state alum and diehard state fan, and a lot of our children's clothes are hand-me-downs from my wife's sister and her kids, and her sister's a state fan well, so Lincoln has very few pieces of UNC attire. He does have a Ramses doll and a Mr. Wolf doll, which both travel around the house together, and often he has to have both of those. But I get a little disappointed. Sometimes he seems to be a little more excited when he sees Mr. Wolf than he does Ramses.
That's unfortunate.
Mr. Wolf, Ramses, and Smokey the Bear. Those are the three stuffed animals that have to always be lined up for him.
Oh, that's adorable. He's
Haven't introduced him to the Demon Deacon yet.
Terrifying.
terrifying. Yeah.
He's also lately been a big fan of Woolly Bull, since we saw the Durham Bull, the Woolly Bull at the Durham Christmas Tower lighting WRAL does. Lucky Strike Light Tower.
Your most favorite section of time in history?
Section in time in history, probably Civil War era.
Is it because of Abraham Lincoln?
I mean, just a lot of stories from there. I actually, when I started, I would have said that. Now it's almost become whatever era I'm teaching. I used to feel like I was dragging through the Gilded Age, but I mean now I get excited teaching Gilded Age. Right now we're teaching Vietnam, Nixon, Watergate, Ford Carter, and so right now it's like that's my favorite. So it's probably wherever we're spending time in class that week.
Yeah, I got a question. If you were to go back in time to any point in history, what would that be?
Ooh. I don't know. Maybe the 1780s when they were writing the Constitution. Since there's so many people now that argue about originalism and what the founding fathers meant, I'd like to go back with a list of all these things. Here's what people argue about in 2024. So tell us what you really meant by this, or how you would have changed the Constitution if you had known about TikTok or something like that.
Because it's really hard for them to interpret the Constitution since all of these new issues that never existed for them. It would be nice to ask all those questions,
Yeah.
I think that would help a lot.
You want to go back to April 14th, 1865?
Oh, okay. Mr. Markham's got a point. April 14th, 1865. So I can say no or shout duck. Yeah. Or, that was when Lincoln was assassinated. I feel like if I had been in the Ford's Theater audience, John Wilkes Booth wouldn't have got away for another 12 days, whatever it was. The dude jumped off of a balcony, broke his leg, and hobbles out and hides out for 2 weeks. You're telling me nobody in that audience can chase him off? I know there was this shock and all, oh my gosh, what's happening? But
He broke his leg.
yeah, go catch the dude. But yeah, maybe Mr. Markham's right. Maybe April 14th, 1865, so I could go and tell Lincoln to duck.
If you had any piece of advice for English students, what would it be? Because I know a lot of my friends are struggling with memorizing everything.
Well, do the reading. Do the reading. do the reading. And then do the reading. Like, I think y'all should take APUSH. But when you take APUSH, you know that you're signing up for a college level course that's strenuous. So I think not just with APUSH, I think with a lot of our AP classes, we have people register for the course and then they're expecting it to be the same commitment level, the same difficulty level as maybe their like honors world history class or something like that, which that's not the case.
Yeah.
Not to say anything about honors world history, but honors world history is taught at the honors freshman level. AP Gov is supposed to be taught at a college level, like you would have if you took a intro to political science your freshman year of college.
Wait, what did you take in college?
Well, I majored in history. I took an intro to political science class. Most schools, your first 2 years, you're taking, they have different things for it, like general college. So like you might have to do some maths or sciences, the boring subjects like that.
Yeah.
And then you get to move more in depth with the interesting subjects, like your major, like history or political science or whatever that may be.
So you majored in history?
I majored in history with a minor in coaching education.
Nice. So you always knew you wanted to be a teacher?
I didn't always know I wanted to be a teacher. I knew that I wanted to do something with history. For a while, I thought I wanted to be a college professor. What kind of made me decide I wanted to be a teacher was actually teaching. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and some of my friends were doing the Masters of Teaching program. I was like, wait a minute. So if I got into that, it's like I could be a college student in Chapel Hill for another year of flag football and intramural basketball, and hanging out on Franklin Street in the evenings and things like that, going to Carolina Duke games. I was like, sign me up. So I signed up for it, and I just kind of fell in love with teaching throughout the process, and part of it was student teaching, and I realized then, like, man, I really love this thing. I had other friends in the program that they were like, oh, I'm definitely going to be a teacher, I can't wait. They did their internship, and they're like, what kind of an idiot would ever do this job? And they got their MAT, they finished the program, Masters in Teaching, but then they never went to a classroom in their life. So it just worked out for me that the master's program that I went into so that I could be a college student for another year and have fun in Chapel Hill ended up being the passion.
Kind of unrelated, but what was your favorite spot on Franklin Street? Because I know they have a really good Euro place, and
we'll say my favorite spot on Franklin Street that high school students could attend was probably Sutton's Drugstore. And I still, if I'm in Chapel Hill on like a Sunday afternoon or something like that, I want to get lunch at Sutton's Drugstore, see Don, the guy that works the counter in the restaurant area at the back. Lots of good restaurants on Franklin Street, but Sutton's Drugstore was the peak for me.
nice. What would you get there?
Usually fajita pita.
Fajita pita. Nice.
That or cheeseburger on the pita.
I didn't know they could do that. That's
No,
really
Sutton's can do
creative.
anything. It's the place where dreams come true.
Well, I guess that's the
And
end of the
that means our
episode.
time's up.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
It's
Thank
been
you so
fun.
much.
Thank y'all.
Nice. So remember, go look at our website. Go look at our Instagram. Go write a blog.
Write a blog.
Write a blog.
Yeah. We'll publish it. And then we already have so many on, so if you just want to go ahead and read some of the
Go
stories.
check out the blogs. Yeah,
Yes, go check
look
out
at
the
the
blogs.
stories.
All right, thank you so
Yep.
much.
Thank you.
Say it.